They're great.
The Asia Strategic Foresight Group is a network of thought leaders from 20 countries in the Asia-Pacific region. Today, here in Bangkok, experts on security and economy have come together to assess the impact of the Trump shock on their economies, as well as discuss how their development models can be adapted to geoeconomic disruption. Prashanth, how do you think that the trade war that President Trump unleashed will actually affect the economies of Southeast Asia?
Well, I think the one word to describe it so far is disruption. It's clear that it's very disruptive. I think it's not as clear what does this actually mean for the value proposition that the United States is having in Southeast Asia. It used to be the case that the U.S. used to lag a little bit when it came to China in terms of trade, but it was a big investor in the region. It was a provider of global stability. And when people thought of the United States, they used to think about the United States as together with allies and partners, which increased the percentage of the US GDP if you included all these other countries. It's not clear whether any of those assumptions can be taken for granted today. And I think that's the big question with respect to this whole trade war.
And if we dive in a little bit deeper, how do you think it will affect, for instance, Malaysia?
Yeah. I think for Malaysia in particular, Malaysia has always had, tried to have at least, a balanced relationship between the United States, China, and other major powers. And it's relied traditionally on the United States more for investment in areas like security, particularly maritime security. And China's been a big player in terms of trade and growing in terms of investment in some of these sectors. I think the big question is Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim, from the time of the Israel-Gaza conflict, has spoken out quite a bit against the United States and its posture and its policies. And along the same lines, China has also made a lot of inroads in Malaysia. And so the big question has been, is Malaysia tilting towards China? And the big worry now is, amid this whole trade war situation, is Malaysia going to be seen as tilting even more in the direction of China? And I think Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim wants to prevent that from happening rhetorically and wants to prevent that from happening in reality, because that reduces Malaysia's options. But it's going to become very difficult if the United States is not going to offer a clear economic value proposition for Malaysia.
Speaking about rhetoric, I think you mentioned earlier that Prime Minister Anwar has a lot of good rhetoric about adaptation. I think he calls it an adaptation state. Can you just enlighten us a little bit what is behind the idea and how much of that is a reality?
Yeah, so he's spoken about this theme quite a bit, and he spoke about it in a speech at the London School of Economics, this idea that given the global disruptions that we're seeing, including the trade war, that Malaysia needs to adapt. There's multiple layers to that adaptation. There's a domestic layer to that, where Malaysia needs to climb up the value chain and not be caught in the middle income trap. There's a regional layer where Malaysia, as ASEAN chair, should try to revive some of these old ASEAN initiatives that some of them have been gathering dust, needs to revive them. And I think also in the bilateral relationship between the United States and China, even though it's going to be difficult for Malaysia to compartmentalize, it should still try to make it clear to both powers that each of them can provide a value proposition for Malaysia in particular sectors. So we'll see whether that works out. As you pointed out, it's a lot of rhetoric. We'll have to see if that actually concretizes into reality moving forward.